Sands of time, no damage, no upgrades. We're moving through the 6th link in a 10 chain of Prince of Persia goodness, and we're using one of the probably the most interesting mechanics in the game as far as being ahead of the curve. So that sequence just then of me climbing looks like a section you've done many times in Tomb Raider, Uncharted. Insert your, what would you call that? Is it kind of a... Oh, we've got the bloody bats. Speaking of. I was gonna say, like, calamitous platformer of choice, but are they calamitous platformers or are they just explorers? Are they just murderers? It's hard to tell, isn't it? Lara Croft, archaeologist, explorer, murderer, and then you've got, good old Nathan Drake, archaeologist, wisecracker, explorer, terrible at Crash Bandicoot, murderer. So are they adventurers or are they just incredibly terrible people? Like, it makes me wonder, in 100 years, are they going to get the Columbus treatment? So instead of being like, oh, he was a great man, he discovered all these wonderful places, it's going to be like, he's a piece of shit, he subjugated all these poor indigenous people, fuck that guy. Like, I wonder how we will remember the mighty Uncharted and the mighty Tomb Raider when we're of the new generation and the new mind and the new order and the new epoch. But this is a wonderful shift in tones of palette, and there's some really, really cool looking caustics here, which I really, really appreciate caustics in this generation of video games as I dry off from my wall running. And this is another one of those rooms. This room is pretty high concept and it looks really complicated, but it's not. It's surprisingly simple, and again, it's rather elegant for the scope and the size of it, but don't get too overwhelmed. Because when I first came in here, I just kind of went, oh wow, this is huge. This might take a while. But then it kind of all naturally and organically leads together. But I did get lost here, guys, and I'm going to give you some advice if you get lost too. I didn't realise you could climb up the rope and go through the big hole in the sky, the Oculus. So I was swinging around here for a bit longer than I care to admit. And all because I didn't realise it wanted you to climb all the way up. And it's just, I was a bit distracted at the time, maybe I was a bit tired, maybe I was having a bad day. Insert reasons that aren't good enough for me missing the point of where I was going. And the good thing is, because I'm an editor, I can edit that shit out and you never know it happens. But because I'm honest, I want to tell you so that you avoid it if you come here as well. And one of the cool things about this project so far has been people telling me the horror stories that they had when they were younger. And I feel it, man. I get you all. It's one of those things, isn't it? People really don't appreciate, I think, what it was like to be in this generation of gaming when there was no internet to save you and your friends didn't know where to go and you didn't have that older gamer that could come in and do the difficult thing for you, so you just had to bang your head against it. And you go back as an adult and you realise that what you were struggling with was actually quite simple, but when you're a kid, it feels like the end of the world, doesn't it? It feels like the most arduous task, just a completely... Like, it's a Sisyphean effort. You try your best, you don't succeed, you try again tomorrow. It's practically Promethean at that. Just dying repeatedly and then coming back. But did you see the bats fly away just then? That was a really good example of the bat sequence. And then you have the weird falling where the prince makes a ton of noise and it makes you think you've took damage, and then you pull your sword out and you're fine. So that's a bit misleading. But I tend to find it's easier to do the bat sequences if you're hanging from something. And you can see I've got it down here. See this? Wait for them to come towards me and then whack them. And then boom, see them fly towards the camera? I always hear that noise, from the start of the Scooby-Doo episode. Admittedly, I'm considerably older than most of you, so you probably don't hear the same Scooby-Doo theme that I do. But if you do, touche to you. What a banger. And then try not to jump diagonally by accident. That's never going to help, is it? Here we go. Climb up here. You might be wondering what that glowing object is. That is one of the upgrades for the sand dagger, I believe. I was just avoiding everything that glowed because I didn't want it to be an upgrade. It's like the thing that ended up happening in Metal Gear Rising when I was going through that to try and get... do the Fox Die run. And I accidentally picked up one of those chests that gives you 10% on your HP and you can't turn it off. I failed my own run before I'd even got started. And then here's the end of the room, guys. Right now, you have to go all the way up the rope. I kept swinging across, even though this camera does a wonderful job of telling you where to go. I apparently was having a senior moment. And then you come out the top of the well back into the beautiful light of this kingdom. Beautiful skybox here as well, with a really, really nice effect happening with the sun. And then you have to take on these standard sand creatures. We've got the blue guy with the twin blade. We've got the captain with the shield and sword. He's a nightmare. And then we have the little jobbers running around that we can get some free retrieves from by jumping over. But I'm just going to use the wall to try and engage with these guys. This enemy is very difficult. It is designed to block almost everything you do. They're quite aggressive. They've got a handful of moves. And they definitely pose a threat if you don't know what to do. But like anything, the more you fight them, the more comfortable you'll get. And then later on, at the end of the game, there's a fight in a room with like 50 of those dudes. So you're going to have to really know how to deal with them, because if you don't, that fight's going to beat you up. But right here, use the wall, use the pillars. I could use this as an opportunity to speak about the pillars, but I think I'm going to talk about that on the fight where it really makes a difference. But the detection on things and the prince not hitting what you want and the jumps not working. This game, for about 95% of your playtime during the combat, is going to just about work to as decent of a standard as it can. But every so often, things start going into clown shoe land, and it just gets really uncomfortable and really awkward, and you'll probably lose a fight. Especially when it comes to like the teleporting and the off-camera stuff. Because the camera is so very sporadic here, and it's quite aggressive at times. And it's nothing that you can't deal with, and it's nothing that you can't understand. But every so often, you know, fuckery is afoot, and you just wonder what went wrong. And it's easy to lose them as well, you know. They look easy, don't they? It doesn't look like anything compared to some games, but it's hard because it's awkward. And I'm happy to report that if you do play the sequel, the combat in the sequel is so much better than the combat in this game. It's night and day. However, that game is considerably harder than this one. Like Warrior Within, you know, people when that game came out, they weren't happy because they went from this happy-go-lucky adventure into this like emo fucking nu metal rock, incredibly punishing game. And I adore that game, it's so good. But we got a couple of environmental hazards here, and you can completely circumvent the first one, and then you can roll through the next one. I like rolling through the hazards. I think it's really cool. I wish there was a little bit more of that, actually. I will repeat this, guys. Prince of Persia, especially Sands of Time, is at its finest when you are platforming. And you know me, guys. I don't like platforming. I don't talk about platformers anymore. I had my moment in the sun with Prince of Persia and N64 collectathons. Nowadays, a game's a platformer. I'll play it for 20 minutes. I'll turn it off. It's not for me. But this, something about this game, dude. It gets right to the core of what I enjoy. But this is a really difficult fight. It doesn't seem like it, but there's lots of enemies. It's a really shitty room. It's super claustrophobic. It's really easy to not get what you want. Bad detection to get you screwed. Wall detection to interrupt your attacks. All this kind of nonsense. So just do everything you can here to be as savvy and as aggressive as you possibly can. It's dancers with the guys with the chains and with a couple of the twin blade blue guys, I think. And the dancer is the only real problem here, because that other monster can be killed with the jumping square triangle. And right now, whenever you recover after that, that's when it gets a bit hairy. But as long as you're... See, just then, I bounced off the wall then, I think. Right now, I'm always mashing jump to jump over the next person. And if you knock down as many people as you can, never ever go ham with jumps when there's a blue guy around, because you might accidentally scale him and the fight's over, you failed. But you notice I immediately stun him with the sand, and then I come back and start attacking the dancers. Knock them down, execute them. We're going to get a quick retrieve off this guy. I'm going to hit him with some sand. I always jump over the guys with the sand because it seems to have almost a pacification going on. If you do that normal attack where the prince attacks them and then flips, they seem to attack you. And I've traded enough times doing that move, I simply don't do it. It's not that I don't know you can do it, guys, it's because it gets me killed. And if you ever wonder why the camera moves up and down kind of weird sometimes, this game has... I turned it inverted, and it wasn't inverted, and I spent the whole game turning it inverted, turning it off inverted, and it just never seemed to be what I wanted it to be. And we've got a couple of breakable walls here, and we've got another fight, and this is a fight where Farah can die, and she did die for me, so... Again, guys, Farah usually doesn't die, and she's very capable, but this fight and the one we did... when I mentioned it in that like banquet hall, Those two fights are the fights where my Fire got absolutely gangbanged. But pull the switch, that opens the doorway, and now when we go back, we're going to be able to go where we need to be. I love the draperies in this. You can tell it comes from that era of like Splinter Cell, can't you? Do you remember when Splinter Cell was being first advertised, and it was just every piece of fabric that you could apply physics to and have somebody walk through it and see it cascading? They literally did that in every situation they could, dude. There were soldiers walking around with like curtains on their fucking guns. It was the funniest thing. This game had it, that game had it. There was just a whole generation at this moment of being like, look at this cool new tech. You know, it was if you could stick a fabric to something, it had fabric. Beautiful. Oh, look at that as well. See that, guys? That's what I'm talking about. Jump over him, come down with an execution, it misses. How the fuck does it miss? It's a scripted action. How can I miss? I'm not in control. And that time, it cancelled it completely. Like, this is the problem with close quarters in fights in this game. It just makes the game stop functioning. And you can see Farah's life on the right there. She will regenerate over time and get her life back, it seems like. But I can never ever see it when I watch it. There's just times when I look at it where she's got low life and then I look back again and her life's back up. So I don't know what governs that or how that actually works, but there, she's going up now. See it? See it then? She just got it up then. I don't know if it's what she does. Maybe when she attacks people, she gets life back or something. But she does get a little bit of cheeky HP regen and it's really helpful. But look how many dudes there are here. You can't even jump over them. There's so many dudes. There's people blocking other people's attacks. And oh, is she drinking water? Dude, if she drinks water, that's amazing. Maybe she does. Because I've not talked about that. She did it then. See, look, her life just went up. I think she's drinking water, guys. That's fucking amazing. So, because this is no damage, you've not seen me heal. The healing in this game involves drinking water. And you can drink any water supply. So over there's water here. The prince will reach down and take a handful of it and heal himself. And I always felt it was one of the most interesting natural healing systems that a game had in this like generation. I think it's a super cool touch because usually there are these fonts that are set up, these fountains for you to drink from. And they're a little bit more gamey and a little bit more, I mean, they are kind of tonally correct because they exist, you know, there's lots of fonts and fountains. But I always liked it, like, you know the start of Warrior Within where you can reach down and drink from the water flooding the boat? Doesn't make any sense if you think about it because it's salt water, but I just thought it was cool that whenever you saw a water source, because, you know, water, aqua is like essentially a symbol for life and for vitality, it was an ability for you to heal. And I think that it's such a cool idea for healing. I think that's why I get pissed off at games a lot, modern games, where games now, if it's not regenerating HP, or if it's not like some fucking potion, or some bloody med pack, like healing has become so just completely predictable and uninspired, you rarely get a different type of healing. And then you have a game like this where you drink water like Duke Nukem. You know, remember in Duke Nukem when you used to turn the taps on and you drink from it, or the fire hydrants and you get life back? How cool was that? Why have we lost that? Where are the new ideas for healing, for regeneration, for getting life back in games in the last 10 years? Why did everybody go, that's a good idea, we'll do nothing but that? Like, can you imagine if every painter painted the same painting every time they paint?
Yes.
It just, why would art exist? Why would anyone care? And it frustrates me that we have a game like this from a company now that's in the shitter right now. Ubisoft are in a horrible place. They have no games coming out. All the prospective games that they were going to bring out, they're pretty much cancelling now and abandoning or not showing at all. Everything they do bring out gets slaughtered for being homogenous and ubiquitous because they've essentially just completely gentrified every game they've ever made into the same fucking thing. And now, the CEO, after all the allegations of, like, sexism and fucking sexual abuse and everything, has gone on to send an email saying, this isn't our problem, this is your responsibility to get our asses out of the fire. And it's like, hang on a second here, bloody Eve. You are the head of the snake. Everything lands on you. You are the one who's supposed to fix this situation. You can't blame the artist. You can't say it's your guy's job to fix our problems. This starts at the top and it trickles down. You know, like, you need to be the spearhead of change. You need to fix your own company. And he's just made a public apology as well, so it's just absurd, isn't it, when you think about it? But this is the same company that made this. The game you're watching right now, maybe you've played it, maybe you haven't. Does this not look more interesting than some of the games that we're getting from fucking Ubisoft? Because unless you like Rabbids, or you're absolutely obsessed with Assassin's Creed, I just don't know what you could get excited for, because Rainbow Six Extraction ain't fucking it, Chief. But we have a fight in the library here against a bunch of the twin-bladed blue guys. The Azure Twin Blade. Whenever I see that weapon, I always think of Final Fantasy IX. It's interesting, isn't it, how it just completely can steal what you think. It's like when you think of chakrams. When you think of chakrams, guys, do you think of Xena? I don't want to think of Xena, but I do. It's just one of those things. She now owns that weapon. That weapon's been around thousands of years. It's Xena made it. Xena's weapon. How dare you? What's that, Mesopotamia? You probably had chakrams. Fuck you, Mesopotamia. Xena, bitch. But you might have noticed that previous fight when we were talking about drinking water before we went into the Ubisoft slander segment. That was a lot of enemies. And we're now moving into the territory because we're on the 6th chapter here, or the 6th sequence. We're moving towards the 10th sequence. The 10th is the shortest in the game. Every fight from this set onwards is going to be beefy. And this one's easy because it's just a bunch of standard spear guys and then the blue twin blade. And all we're going to do is retrieve from the browns, and we're going to bank all the sand powers on the blues. And that's all that's needed. Farah's going to hit them with the bow, she's going to help us out with a couple of stuns, and as long as we play patient and we don't get unlucky, we should be okay. And then we have another high concept puzzle in this room. And it's another one of those puzzles that works way better than it has any right to do so. And it looks really, really complicated, but it's not, guys. It's complex by being simple. It's a lot of moving parts, moving only so slightly to make a whole. And I think it's really, really good level design and really, really good puzzle design. There's one area that I don't like, though. Once we do the puzzle coming up, there's a sequence where you have to come down, and it involves doing a jump that's really fiddly. And maybe it's not a jump you're supposed to do, and maybe I've invented a new strategy, but I fell like 15 times trying to do a basic jump, and I just got the feeling that it shouldn't have been like that. And who knows, maybe it's emulator, maybe it's, you know, an embolism, I don't know. It could be a million things. Maybe I'm just going senile. But the definition of insanity is the combat in this game. And I started out when I was recording this, I was really enjoying it, you know, coming back and being like, yeah, Prince of Persia, this is cool. By the time I got to this chapter, I'm like, fucking die, mate. Jesus, how many dudes is there? It did not last long. But thank you for watching, and you take care now.